Yesterday I finished my ball joint repair, which means I can take this down to get a full inspection done. So I've basically taken everything that I can that's at least a little bit heavy out of the van, and that's just to keep my weight down a little bit. That'll be better for insurance purposes once I get my weigh certificate. And then I also have to remove the seat that I'm sitting in to pass the inspection. So I'm going to do that now. Oh no, where's my seat? Okay, so here's all my stuff stored in this shed. I will pick it all back up in the afternoon. Okay, so now that that seat is removed, it's time for me to bring this down to the mechanic to hopefully pass my inspection. Pretty clearly you can see that I fucked up big time. Okay, so I really messed up. I took this to go get the safety inspection, and while I was driving down the highway, the main strip that goes down Cranbrook, I started to hear a squeaking coming from my wheel. Now, it had handled well up to this point, but I was driving slowly just because I just replaced these ball joints. I wanted to be careful. So I heard the squeaking noise, and so I immediately took my foot off the brake, or not off the brake, off the gas, applied the brake, and I could immediately tell that something was wrong. The handling of the vehicle felt strange. With the braking, I don't really quite know how to describe it, but pretty quickly my front right-hand side sort of took a dip down, and so that I really put my foot down on the brake, and I skidded in a straight line for about a block maybe, while I came to a halt. It did feel a bit more like a skid than a brake. When I did that, I put the vehicle in park, pulled the emergency brake, and I got out. And that's when I saw the problem. My right hand front wheel was on an angle. So obviously when I did my repair to that side, I messed something up. Because basically what ended up happening was the axle nut came off. And I've been thinking about this. Why that could have happened. I've got a couple theories, but I'll get to that in a little bit. Of course, because I left everything in the shed, I didn't have any jacks, I didn't have any jack stands, I didn't have any cones. I've got a couple of orange buckets that normally I would use for that. So I put my hazards on, and then I stood sort of on the side of the road, a good bit behind the vehicle. I called, my phone's dead, which is why I'm using this camera. Hopefully it is fine. I called for a tower to come, and then I stood on the side of the highway, flagging people, just trying to get them to, move out of my lane. It was a 2-lane highway. I was on the right-hand side, luckily. So I was just trying to get people to, go into the left-hand lane to go along. Partly because I didn't want them to, rear-end the parked car, and partly just because I didn't want them to, be frustrated waiting behind, because that happened a couple times. I was out there for several hours. Eventually, a guy from CVSE showed up. For those of you in the States, that's the Commercial Vehicle Safety Enforcement, I think. They're basically, I think they're the equivalent of the Department of Transportation in the States. I'm not quite sure. But these guys deal with commercial vehicles, which is what this is. So he ended up parking behind me. Actually, there was 2 guys who showed up, but one of them ended up parking behind me with his lights on so that I could stop flagging that stuff. And we waited for several hours. I'm not quite sure how many it was. I didn't have my phone. I think it was about 3.5 hours. At about 2, the tow truck arrived, took one look at the vehicle, said you have to get the heavy duty one. I think it's the 12-ton that they ended up sending. And that was the same guy who actually towed me out of the driveway when I got stuck in the winter. He took me to Cal Tire, at my request. We were right down the street from the mechanic who did the inspection and replaced my transmission. Those of you who've been following around know that I'm never going back there again if I can help it. Plus, they're the ones who did my inspection, so I thought it would probably be better to bring this to a different mechanic, just so that when this repair is done, I can take it, get the inspection passed. They don't need to know about this, which I just think is probably the best way to go about handling things. So I brought it to Cal Tire, which is actually where I'm parked right now. And they won't be able to work on it till tomorrow. This happened on Monday. And they said they wouldn't be able to work on it until Thursday. I'm filming this on Wednesday. And I'm sorry I didn't get to filming this video sooner. I didn't really film anything during this incident just because, well, it felt super awkward to do that, sitting on the side of the road, you know, while people are, you know, honking their horns at me. But also just because I was so caught up in dealing with the situation at hand that, you know, I just didn't want to try and distract with filming. So yeah, that's where we stand. They basically said that they've done some stuff on it already. I can see that. They haven't said anything because basically I worked out a deal. They said it was okay if I, you know, after hours if I stay in my vehicle, which is awesome. I've got a place to stay. And so when I come home at night, I've sort of noticed that the first day they'd taken the wheel off, which, by the way, you could just take off. It just, you know, blow on it and it would come off. And I could see that my axle spindle, I believe it's called, wasn't bent. It was in perfect shape, except on the bottom part of the spindle, it had sort of sheared. Like if you took a thing of butter and you did this on one of the corners, it was sort of smeared. So that obviously needs to be replaced. When I came home today, the whole knuckle's gone, which is what the axle's attached to. And so the actual mechanic who's supposed to work on it has time scheduled to work on it tomorrow. So hopefully I'll know more. That was another reason I didn't film things. I just didn't really know much information. Yeah, so what happened is that, I mean, obviously this is my fault. When I was working on that ball joint repair on the right hand side, I messed something up. And you know what, maybe the mechanic will tell me something different tomorrow. We'll find out. But right now, this is what I'm thinking. The easy answer is that the axle nut wasn't torqued down properly. But the more I've been thinking about it, the more I remember torquing that axle nut down very specifically. I'm not 100% sure. I mean, obviously, when I did that, I was really tired. So that's certainly a lesson learned. You know, maybe don't do important mechanical work when you're bone weary. But I don't think that's actually what happened. I think the problem is that the axle hub, or the part with the brake and the, yeah, I think it's called the axle hub. No, not axle hub. Brake hub? Wheel hub? Wheel hub. I don't think that was pushed far enough back. In the last video, when I was editing it, I edited it after this happened, I kind of noticed, I put that on, then I took it off to put in the dust shield, then I put it back. Now, there isn't really good footage of me doing that, so I wasn't able to get much information from editing it, but I think what I did was when I put it back with the dust shield, that dust shield sticks out a little bit. So it doesn't align perfectly when you put that hub back in. So I'm thinking the edge of that kind of hid the fact that the hub wasn't all the way back, and I didn't double check to make sure that was firm. It felt, you know, like, okay, that is pushed all the way back in, but I think if I'd wiggled it a little bit more up and down, it would have fit in perfectly. So I think when I torqued down the castle nut, I torqued it down properly. I torqued it down, I think it's 200 foot-pounds is the spec for that. But when I drove, that whole hub had like maybe that much room to move back and forth. And it was in place with friction, but you know, while you're driving, you cause vibrations, you know, it's the wheel. So as soon as that made even the slightest slip, one way or the other, that castle nut was no longer torqued at all, because it would have pulled away. So I think what happened was I torqued it down fine, but I didn't align the hub, which is really bad. That moved. That meant the nut wasn't torqued. That meant the whole weight of that tire and brake, you know, if I moved even a slight bit, was free to just push straight through. So no doubt it just tore straight through the cotter pin and then pulled away. Now, while it pulled away down the axle, it would have tilted out because there's weight going on the wheel. So it tilted out, the whole car went down, and that car, the vehicle tilting that way put pressure on it. That's what crushed the tip of the spindle. And that's probably a really good thing, because that stopped the wheel from coming off completely. If the wheel had come off completely, then I would have been in a lot more serious trouble than I was, because the wheel didn't come off completely. That side was still off the road. The other 3 brakes were able to work. The other 3 wheels were able to work. And I wasn't putting weight on anything, like, you know, directly that shouldn't have had weight on it and stuff like that. So, yeah, I really messed up. I'm not trying to hide that. I'm not trying to, you know, make excuses for that. This is on me. I really am learning about mechanical stuff, and I made a big mistake, and that was a dangerous mistake. I could have been very seriously hurt, and I could have hurt someone else. I think that's important to acknowledge. I was lucky though, and when I drove, I was driving under the speed limit. Luckily for me, it happened going down a straight, empty section of road. I mean, it happens to be kind of right down in the middle of town, but there was no one there. Yeah, this is really eye-opening for me. So that's one of the reasons why I'm having a mechanic fix it. First of all, I just want them to deal with it. Right now, that whole like money cost thing, like whatever, I'll pay for however much it costs to fix this. I'm still going to be doing my own mechanical work from now on. Definitely going to spend a little bit more time with this when I'm learning what I'm doing, and just double checking things, making sure that things are safe and whatnot. And obviously I thought that I had done that. Yeah, so I will kind of end this here for now. I'll pick up tomorrow when I know a little bit more. I have a kind of a bad feeling that parts might be difficult to get for this vehicle based on past experience, so we'll see if it actually gets finished tomorrow. Hopefully it does. Welcome to my new home. Hopefully this is only for one more night. Okay, so here's what it is right now. Actually, I just thought I'd show you this. They've taken the knuckle. Brake calipers are over here. Actually, that small part of the brake caliper that goes in the back, that came completely off during the accident, and it was about half a block down the highway behind me. And yeah, my wheel's just over here. Oh yeah, I've made a modification here. I lost my keys, and so I found out that my backup door keys don't actually work, which is great. So I have had to leave the cab unlocked, plus there's mechanics and stuff in here. And in the past, I've kind of been concerned about this door, you know, having everything that I own back here, my passports back there and stuff. So when I've had mechanical work done, I've taken it away with me and stuff like that. So I've installed a lock here. This is just a kind of a gate latch here. Just something basic so that people who have access to the cab can't just go back there. I've moved this old one up here, and it's still useful because this is a lot more firm than this one. There's a lot of play in this lock. So this is basically for keeping the door from moving around while the vehicle's moving. It's always been a part of the van, but it was just down here where this new lock is. So now I'm able to lock it if I need to, type deal. From this side. So I want to make a quick note about this lock because I know it's going to come up. It's actually a comment that I get a lot. People are kind of concerned that there are people running around trying to lock people in their vans. I'm sure it's happened somewhere to someone, but it's not that, it's not something I worry about. But a lot of people seem to worry about it on the channel. So I was just going to address this for the sake of, you know, preempting that. This has always been here. This has to be here. If I don't, this goes flying around. As far as I'm aware, there is no type of lock for this sort of door set up that you can lock from the inside and the outside. I'm sure I could make something, but I've had this forever. It's perfectly fine. So adding this lock here doesn't really make any difference. All this does is give me added security when I've left the when I've left the van, you know, or like if I've given someone else access to the van. That's all it does. It doesn't actually change anything, because, and in fact, this is a lot harder if it's locked to activate than this is. Plus I have the back door, the back window, and the escape hatch back there. So if something like that ever happened, this lock here is pretty much a non-issue. Yeah, that's all I really want to say about that, but it's just something I know is going to come up if I don't address it. Moving on with the video. Alright, so it's the next day, and I've received my vehicle back in working condition. It cost me a pretty penny. I ended up spending $1,430 on this repair, which is more than I obviously wanted to. But there was a lot replaced. So I'm just going to go through and list the things that got replaced. Basically the wheel bearings, the seals, the caliper. This is all on the right hand side of the vehicle. Pads, bearing replacements, yeah, that's there. The rotor itself got replaced, and so did the spindle. Spindles are expensive. They're almost $300 each. So yeah, it all kind of adds up real quickly for something like that. However, once they did get to doing it on Thursday, which is when they said they were going to do it, these guys were quick. They got me out of there, you know, in time for me to go and do some stuff that I needed to do that day. It's a lot more money that I wanted to spend. But there's, I guess, a silver lining in that I've been trying to sell my steampunk scooter. And I finally did, so some of that money will go towards paying for this. Yeah, so that's all good news. Tomorrow, hopefully, I will be able to bring down and try this whole thing with the inspection over again. I did call that mechanic. Very first thing they did was try and ask for more money, basically, which really pissed me off, because they specifically told me that it wouldn't, but we'll see how that goes. Yeah, this has been a bit of a setback, but you know, it is. Oh, right, forgot about this. I have 2 new sets of brake pads. Not 2 new sets. They come in a pack of 4, right? So for the right side, that's been done. So those can go on my left-hand side so that everything is balanced. That's something that I should do at some point. You shouldn't replace one side of your brakes and not the other. So yeah, just thought I'd mention that. I do have that there to do the other side. All my stuff is still in the shed. And yeah, so I'll give this the whole thing a second go tomorrow. Okay, so here you can really see the difference with the new rotor here, and you can also see it back there a little bit. I can kind of make out the brake calipers. I'm not sure that you guys can over here. It's all nice and shiny.